Hey guys, welcome to the show. Today we are joined with custom course maps designer Richard Rasch. He is a cartographer that designs accurate T signs and course maps for frisbee golf. So it's going to be a fun conversation.
What up? What up? What up?
Hey,
How you doing today?
I'm great. I live in the dream, I think. Trying to anyway.
that's awesome. Before we get started, just if you want to tell us exactly how you got into your origin of disc golf.
Okay.
You can start us at the beginning.
I knew about this sport when I was in high school, and of course you can see by the gray hair, that was way before the internet. So you couldn't just go somewhere and find out where a basket was. And I don't even know how I discovered it, but I knew it was a California sport or it was somewhere else. I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Texas and it was not in Texas. But I knew enough about it that I would get my friends outside my parents' house. They had an acre and a half. We would take our little freestyle frisbees and we would just pick a tree and throw. And I don't think I saw a basket until I got to college. And it was a school in Texas that had one basket in an area near the river where everyone sunbathed. And it was just a practice basket that was out there, but you couldn't use it because people were laying all over the place sunbathing. But the funny thing about that school, this is in a town called San Marcos. It's Texas State, University of Texas State now, it's something like that. But now, I mean, the name has changed since I was there. But the odd thing about it is I went to school there for music. I was a choir director back in the day. I went back to my old high school to teach and ended up teaching computer graphics through a very long story that this podcast does not have time for. But when I started teaching computer graphics, I went and visited my brother who was at that school, and they had a course there. That basket had then been turned into a course, and my brother had started playing. And so I said, let's go. And, I had known about it, but it took my younger brother actually buying discs and playing it. And we went out and played the course. We played it horribly. And then by that time, the internet was out there. I went back to Houston and looked up courses and started playing. And the crazy thing is, I hate to be, as a teacher, I hate to be someone who brags about knowing something, because everyone who knows something also has some deficiency somewhere else that they suck at. I am a horrible speller. I cannot spell. I mean, autocorrect is saving my bacon all the time. Yeah. But I have a really good sense of direction. And I started playing local courses in the Houston area down in Texas. And I would finish the course. I'd walk back to and look at the course map and say, that's not what I just played. Those lines aren't going the right direction, or that long hole has a short line. And anyway, but I was teaching computer graphics. I said, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to go find out what it takes to do maps. And I think I made my first map with illustration software, Adobe Illustrator, in 2020. So I started playing in 97, and in 3 years I was starting to make maps because I thought I could figure out how to make them to scale and make them look like they're supposed to look. But back then, even in the internet, what was an aerial photo? Microsoft had a website called Terra Server that coughed up black and white images in little tiles.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of detail, but at least you could tell where the parking lot is, and you could tell where the roads are, and maybe you could tell where the trees are. And so what I did is I went out and bought a GPS, a decent one, and I would just go mark the baskets and the tees, get the longitude and latitude, and then dump that into Adobe Illustrator. And I found, I was doing a lot of reading, and I found a plugin that would take that data and throw it into Illustrator and make it what's called geo-referenced, so that if you click on the map, it's like being on Google Maps, but it's your own drawing. If you click on it, it tells you where you are. It tells you, and if you draw a line, it tells you how long that line is. So you can draw a fairway and it says that fairway is 350 feet. Then you can curve that fairway and it tells you how long the curve is. So it has all kinds of crazy good detail. So I started making maps, and then I just started adding to the process. And now what I do using what's called GIS software, so it's just the letters G, I, and S, and it stands for Geographical Information System. And it's really not a great name because it's one of those names that can mean a dozen things. So it's like, well, what did he say? But basically, GIS data is data that has a spatial reference. In other words, if you took all of the people that lived in all the zip codes in the state of Texas, that would be geospatial data, because the zip code tells you where they are and the data tells you how many there are. So anything like that is usable. And what I use is elevation data. So I don't want to get too inside baseball, but you got to nerd out a little bit when you're talking specific.
No, absolutely. Because I think that this is, your signs are the most detailed signs I've ever seen. And the elevation, the part of it is, it's great. It's what makes yours different by far, so.
No, I appreciate that. And that's what I'm really trying to hone in on. And so the other part of the story is I moved to Minnesota back in 2006. So I had played disc golf for roughly 10 years. And then I moved to Minnesota, from the flat Gulf Coast of Texas up to, it's not mountainous by any means, but it's not flat. There are some hilly courses, it's like parts of Tennessee, right outside of Knoxville, like the hole we were talking about it. And did you say Roane County?
Roane, yes.
Yeah. So it's got that kind of elevation change. And so I started getting into, well, how do I do this? How do I do contour lines and all that sort of stuff? And what there is, you can get a data product called a digital elevation model, or DEM. And if you know anything about a graphic, like a photograph, it's made up of tiny little pixels, and the little pixels have different colors, and you put enough of those together and you get a picture. The digital elevation model, each pixel is a certain color based on the elevation of that point. In other words, the elevation above sea level for that particular spot is a certain color gray. And the higher it is, the lighter color it is, and the lower it is, the darker. And all that is just a set of data. And every little pixel is a known space. Like a known place in it, like has a known coordinate, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You can use that for so many things. And basically, what the reason they're made is because that elevation model can be used to calculate flooding during a rainfall event. So most people know what flood insurance is, and then they have the government publishes flood maps to tell you what your risk of flooding is. You can get really accurate flood maps with this elevation data. So a lot of counties create it, and it's usually tax funded, and it's usually online for free if you know where to look. And so what I've spent the last 10 years doing is figuring out where to find it, and then figuring out something useful to do with it. And I think as we talk about this and we look at some examples that I put up on that page.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, can you pull up that page so we can maybe see?
Yeah.
What he's talking about? And
it might be, I put some descriptor graphics up that sort of help some things. So there's the hole you asked about. But if we go to the very next one. Okay. So that one that has 4 little pictures. The upper left corner is a digital elevation model. And you can see in the center of that gray square, or that gray rectangle, it's lighter colored. Yeah. And then down below it and to the left, you can see a dark channel. That's the creek. So the creek bed is the lowest point, and you can see the channel. Then immediately to the right, you can see the green. We're going to stay on these little 4 pictures. The green one is just a shade that's been applied to the gray. So basically it's just a green overlay. But
Yeah.
the reason I'm using green is green looks more like the earth than the gray does. Then the light gray one in the lower left, if you see that little flashlight icon, that's called hillshade or shaded relief. And that's what it looks like if you shined a light, or like the sun was shining across that. It shows you where sort of the ups and downs are. You can now see the hill, and you can see the channel the creek is in. And then the other one that's kind of tough to see because it's just the contour lines that are added to the map. And basically, those 3 rectangles are what I use for the base of the map. I don't use the gray one in the upper left. That's the one that's used to make the green, make the shade, and make the contour. You sandwich those together, and you have a very good depiction of the terrain. Now, if you scroll back up to the top, we can see that same idea. So you basically have hole 13, and the big thick black line is the road. And then the thin line is, I think, a bike path. There's a bike path.
It's a walking trail, yes.
Yeah. So if you look at that curve of the bike path, you can see how the ground,
the hillshade right there.
You see the darkness. It sort of shows you there's a curvature.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's really cool.
Are you the only one doing this?
The only one I've seen. Only one. Okay.
Yeah.
There are people that are putting the little distance lines, the little arcs. I've seen that.
Sure.
And there are people putting contour lines because they've been able to find them and put them into their map. And that's great. But I don't know of anyone who's actually putting the shaded colors. So if you notice, the color is dark green right down around the coast or around the shoreline, because that's the lower elevation. And then if you notice right where the road is, where the bike walking trail and road are closest together, that's one of the higher spots. It's light colored. And you don't know it at first, but your eye brain takes it in and sees a shape.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do with the base maps.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, especially right there, which I've played this hole so many times, it kicks my ass. It's
Sadly,
the hardest,
he knows it well.
It's the hardest hole like in our area, and I love it. And hey, it's a love-hate relationship with it, but like where you can see that shading right there. I mean, have played it so many times that like that's a deep goalie right there in the shading right off the tee box. And I mean, if you've played it and you see that, you know exactly like, oh, that's the goalie, and it's. I mean, it looks great. Like it's really cool.
Well, and thank you. One of the things when you had asked about, hey, can you do a certain hole? First of all, I love the challenge of seeing if I can find the data, in a quick turnaround, because that was, I think, yesterday. It was 24 hours, and it didn't take me 24 hours, but it was just like, hey, in 24 hours, can I go find what I need? And I wanted to give a couple of shout outs too, because one of the things I do when I do this remotely, and just so everyone knows, I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota. So it's not like I was able to go down there and look at this.
Sure.
I'm doing this all remotely. And the GIS data helps you do that because everything's in the right place. I don't have to guess where the shoreline is. Yeah. Because the elevation tells me where the land meets the water.
Yeah.
So it's really good that way. But I did I want to make sure I don't get any noise. There was two YouTube videos. One is called Door Disc Golf. He did a walkthrough practice round, and then another channel called Back to Traveling, and I think that's Dustin Koppel. Anyway, just a shout out to those guys because I watched those videos where they got to hole 13, so I could tell what I'm looking at. You know what I'm saying? That sort of helped figure out. But man. That hole's nothing but tree trunks.
It's tough, man, and of course the walking trail and the water is OB. So, I mean, it's a
tight landing zone.
I saw on the YouTube where they explained it could be played as an OB, and so that's why I routed the fairway around. The distance, that fairway line is 485, but the straight distance to that pin is probably 470.
Okay.
So that curve adds about 15 feet, but I curved it around the bike path because I knew that was played OB.
Yeah.
And if you look, you can see the 350 to 400 mark If you turn that sideways, it shows you the fairway is only about 50 feet wide
Yeah.
between the path at that pinch point, the path and the shore. And then if you go online to where this image is and you click on it, you can zoom in and you can see the contour lines right on the edge is super steep. Like, you know, it's not a super flat area to land a disc in.
No.
So you're going to be in trouble all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a tough one, and like I said, it's like a love hate. I love the hole, but I've lost hundreds of dollars of discs in that lake, and I've cussed more so much, like it's ridiculous
Yeah.
because that 50 foot where that is wide, there's also probably 10 trees in that 50 foot. I mean, it's a terribly awesome hole.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
It's-
and the thing I hate most about making these remote maps is when I get done making it, I want to go play it. And it's,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
And I got to wait.
It's funny you mentioned that you, like, obviously you being in Minnesota, you use whatever you did to like get this data. Gibbs posted a video of me on Twitter throwing like a 200-foot hole, 230 feet, and then somebody made a comment.
Yeah.
There was like, yeah, big whoop, it's somebody throwing a routine 200-foot shot. And then you commented and you're like, actually, and then like you broke it down to like,
Oh, that was you.
this elevation. Yes. And I was like, who is this guy? Google Earth?
Yeah, I know that course. I was looking at it the other day, and I was looking for something. Oh, is that course near?
Cleveland, Tennessee, Menace Hollow is what I'm referring to, I believe.
Yes, but isn't it also? Okay, no, I'm thinking of one in Arkansas. Yeah, I went. So that's one of the things I love to do. Like, oh, let's go find out what's going on this, because not only is the challenge of the hole hitting the green, but not flying past it.
Yes.
And you can't tell. That's okay. So watching Disc Golf Pro Tour.
Yes. I was about to ask.
I'm inaugurating a new drinking game. Every time the commentator says, you can't tell how steep this is on camera.
And you're like, well,
and I want to say, you can if you have an elevation map.
Yes.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Do they get it wrong all the time? Like,
No.
does it happen very often?
No,
I know that.
what, well, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. I'm not.
No.
I
No,
don't
go
have a
ahead.
chip. I don't have a chip on my shoulder. I'm just trying to show people what is possible.
Yes.
Do we need it? I don't know yet. But-
well, I know hole 4 at Bad Rock Creek that just
Yeah.
recently they said that it was
Yeah.
like 938 feet.
939.
And then you were like, well, no, it's actually around 850.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how they got that number.
Well, and I kind of, so, I'm not, it's not like I have a chip on my shoulder, but I do put up questions that are like, hey, what's going on here? One of the things about the Disc Golf Pro Tour is, where is the second opinion? Where
Right.
is the double check? And of course, they do kind of what the PDGA does. They have a local committee that puts that course together. And I'm interested in finding out why and what. I don't care if someone made a mistake, but what I find interesting is that during the broadcast, when I think it was Charlie was on there, and Charlie's been really helpful to me too, because I've put a few graphics out there that he used in the past, which has been really helpful. So I'm not trying to play a blame game at all.
Sure.
But after I posted that, they stopped talking about the distance when they got to that hole. And I think that's fine. They don't have the graphic changed. And I don't know with their production, it could be a limited team or whatever it is. But what I did look up is I went back to last year's tournament. I think it was a Q qualifier. So there is video, and I got the caddy book, which was also the same. I think it was a Disc Golf Pro Tour caddy book. And then I looked at the overall map, and it looks like from the overall map, that basket was shoved way down that channel. It's mowed because that's where the power towers are. Those electric towers run down there. That basket was shoved way down closer to 5's tee. And I have and that hole that we saw this year was used last year. So I have video of that happening twice. Both years it was 939. And I think probably what happened, they were planning to put the basket way down there to make it extra long. And they probably changed it to make that little step that they have with a raised basket, the little bricks around it and all, which is a much nicer looking. They probably measured the old location and then updated it and never changed the number.
Sure.
And Dixon Jowers was doing on-course coverage during FPO second round Saturday morning, and he lasered from the tee to this little tree. So basically the way the setup is they're using the longest tee. There's a medium tee and a short tee. And that little tree is about 50 feet in front of the short tee. And he gave a report. And I later watched him on one of the other podcasts talk about all the planning he did. So he had lasered a bunch of stuff so he could talk about it. And he lasered from tee to that little tree. That little tree is in line with the dog leg. He lasered from the tree to the basket, and he came up with 330 and 420, or no, 330 and 520. So he came up with 850. And when I measured it using aerial photographs, I came up with 855. And I thought, okay, that's verification. And what it tells you is no one adjusted it in 2 years, in 2 tournaments for the disc. And does it matter? I think it does in the long run, because if I can get close from 400 miles away, then, and this is the Pro Tour. This is the top level. We should have everything that can be right.
Yeah.
And we don't usually move baskets or tees during a round. So it's more bang for the buck if you can get the number right, because it's going to be the whole time.
Absolutely. That could change somehow what disc somebody throws on a hole, or change their game completely if they're not using a rangefinder, which, by the way, how accurate are rangefinders for that matter?
I mean, I don't have one, and I don't know, but I've asked people, I say, hey, what's the plus or minus on that? And they say, well, it's plus or minus 3 feet. Well, what if you're 3 feet away? I mean, does that mean it's 0 and you're 3 feet away? Or is it 3 feet for every 500 feet? So is it 6 feet at 1,000 feet? How does that change? I don't use one. I probably should, but I used other ways of measuring. I mean, and I know when I'm close, and there's a couple of things I do with my T signs to account for that. But I mean, I don't want to go so long talking that we run over every question, but it
is funny to think that like someone's shooting a hole with a rangefinder and you're like, no, I don't do that. And you pull out a laptop and Google Earth. And you're like, we're around 432 and you got 440. So,
well, okay. So can I tell you this real quick? This is what, do you guys play golf at all?
I do.
This guy.
Okay. I played twice in my life. I'm terrible at it. I'm 6'4", and that little golf ball is so far away. It's way down there. And so I just never gravitated to it. But I watch it on TV like crazy because I love the mental game. You're in the lead, you got a 5-stroke lead, and are you going to blow it, or you're going to just, nail it all the way? Like Rory at the Masters, he had that lead coming in, right? He tried to give it away. I love that because that is also disc golf. The same mental game exists. Mm-hmm. But I had to learn about golf a little more when I started measuring disc golf. Like, how are they mapping?
Yeah.
The distance in golf is to the center of the green.
Yeah.
Not to the cup. And if the cup is closer or further, they don't update the number back there at the tee. When you play golf, you set the ball at the marker, usually right up front, and usually where there's no other divot from the previous players. We don't put the disc and kick it. We hold it in our hands, and we can throw it from anywhere. We can throw it from the back of the tee. We can throw it right on the front edge of the tee. We can throw it from the middle of the tee. And the other problem we have, golf measures in yards.
Yeah.
How many golf balls fit in a yard? Probably 30.
Yeah.
We measure in feet, and discs are 8 inches across, which is more than half of the foot. And we land in a basket that's bigger than 2 feet. So you can land in the front, you can land behind the pole.
Yeah.
Anything. Why are we measuring to the nearest foot? It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So I got this from Chuck Kennedy, because I don't know if you know Chuck Kennedy is the guy that created the player ratings for PDGA.
Did not know that.
He lives here in the Twin Cities.
Did he ever explain to you how the fuck it worked?
I didn't ask.
You'd probably be lost like we are.
I quit trying to figure it out.
Oh, that guy's got it going on upstairs. I mean, he's always thinking through stuff. But I think since he did it and has not been involved as much with the PDGA, I think it's been tweaked in a bunch of different ways. And
I'm sure.
I
love it. I mean, I love it. I'm a ratings chaser. We both are. Like that's
right.
That's our thing. We chase ratings, and but man, I've had 2 or 3 smart people try to explain it to me, and I'm just like, just stop. I'll just take whatever they give me.
Well, I always wonder too that when you rate a course based on who played it, but then you rate who played it based on the course, that you don't end up with some big circular reference where something can be wrong for a while until it finally gets sorted out.
Yeah.
But so I measure to the nearest 5 feet. I think that's enough, because where is that disc leaving your hand and where is it actually landing in the basket? And if you are within 5 feet of the distance, that means you are going to have to make anywhere from a 2.5 to a 5 foot putt.
Yeah.
Extra. That's not a problem.
Sure.
And I think we tie our hands when, I just shake my head when I see this hole's 1,001 feet. I'm changing discs because there's an extra foot on that hole.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. One thing to go back to your course maps or the T signs, one detail that you put in there that I really love is like the little graphic of the elevation change and how that affects the play. Like how, because you always hear someone say that if it's a hole, it's like 300 feet. And since it's downhill, they're like, well, it plays more like 250. Like that will show you accurately how what distance that hole actually plays.
Yeah.
With the downslope. I think that's really cool. And that would be very useful on T signs.
I think it's knowable, and I think we should include it. That elevation data I talked about earlier isn't available everywhere. It's becoming more popular and easier to find, but in the Western states that are mountainous, it's actually harder to find because the terrain is so steep. You don't need that level of detail. When you get areas that can flood, like a hurricane prone area, it's easy to find elevation data for the Gulf Coast because it's always getting hammered with heavy tropical rains. So they update that stuff all the time so I tried to do Portland. What is the course they played? They play the course. Is it McIver?
Milo McIver.
Where he hit the Albatross where
That's Milo. Yeah.
Oh, Milo. I'm sorry. At least I got the.
That was it, Milo McIver.
Yeah, it's Milo McIver. You're right.
I have the right name there.
Yeah.
Elevation data is a little bit spurious for that. I did try to map one of the holes that's really downhill, and it was hard to find. And then there's another one they used for, I think, the Portland Open. It's up in the like above Canyon Road. And the elevation data stops like 2 miles from the park.
Wow.
Because it just hadn't come out yet, and it probably has by now.
Sure.
But I'm not going out and paying a lot of money for this stuff. I'm trying to find out what's already available. And I think I didn't put this graphic on the site, and I probably should have. But if you get that hill shade that shows you the little bumps and everything in the elevation, and you do the hill shade for like a parking lot for a church or a mall, and you know how parking lots have those little islands where they'll put trees? You can see those little islands, and the curbs are 8 inches. I mean, it is so precise.
Yeah.
I didn't do this. When I made 13, I noticed this morning when I looked at the elevation data, there's a little path because the woods are so tight. There's a little walking path off the tee for like the first 50 feet where everyone's foot traffic has sort of just
beat it down.
Yeah. And you can see that in the elevation data.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's really neat.
And there's another thing too. If you want to pull the website back up, I had just put a few graphics up that sort of show what you're looking at. And I wanted to say this. I probably should just wait for more of your questions, but
no,
you're fine.
One of the things is about aerial imagery. So if we go down to the third item, I think that's where it is. That's it. Okay. So the red square is the same piece of land. And it's so funny because I was just sitting there trying to think of his name. Ryan Coster. You asked him, he was the one doing he does the stamps, is the graphic designer. That was a great interview.
Thank you.
He talked about how he got into disc golf, and he mentioned his brother's friend or his friend's older brother was Steve Hedstrom.
Yeah.
Steve hired me to do some tee signs for a course in Michigan last year. And I get this call from the superintendent of a city that's like 20 miles away, 30 miles away. He said, "Hey, we're putting in this disc golf course, and I saw your signs over there in Rush City, and man, they were great. I want to have them." I said, "Okay, what do you got?" And he sends me this image, this Google. It's basically Google Earth, or the Google that you get when you just go on the internet. And he said, it's called the pipeline, because you can see that giant pipeline is running through the trees in the middle. And I said, does it have any elevation? And he goes, yeah, there's this really strange elevation in the lower corner. And I said, oh, well, let me take a look. Well, if you look at the hillshade, you see that big, thick line. It looks like a scar.
Mm-hmm.
That's an old railroad line from the logging days.
Wow.
You cannot see that there's any elevation in the forest above. But when you take hillshade, you can see where the high and low spots are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's neat.
So what I tell everyone who's a designer, if you have a heavily wooded course, you need to get a hillshade. You want to find that tiny little hill to put a tee on, or the tiny little hill to put a basket on, but you can't see it in the woods. You can locate it here, get a GPS, and go out and find it.
Yeah.
And so you can look at the terrain that you have to work with before you even start putting fairways in. And then the other interesting thing is, if you see a railroad line there, then the trees there are going to be younger than any other trees.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a good place for a fairway.
Yep, absolutely.
So those are the kind of clues that you can have when you're looking at elevation data as part of just scouting out a piece of property.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about getting into course design?
I have not, because I'm so busy with maps.
Yeah, I guess.
But I do, if someone says, hey, let's get your opinion on this, or even if I'm out mapping a course for someone who's just put it in and they're still fleshing things out, and I'll say, well, have you thought about this? And I say, look over here, you got this pile of rocks here, and you could do this with this, that sort of thing. I did do, it was in Minnesota, and I gave a proposal, but they ended up going with the same company that they bought the baskets from. And when I looked at the property, I realized if they had the hillshade, they could have found so many better options, because there were small mounds and things you couldn't see because the weeds were so high.
Yeah.
Because weeds all seem to grow the same height, but you could have had this great tee pad over on this little elevated area. Just a missed opportunity. But if it gets redesigned, it can get used.
Absolutely. That bottom square looks like a UAP would be there. Those like the images you see where the Navy pilots.
Right. Because they're all grayscale.
Yes.
And black and white. Yeah, and you can see even if you look at the big pipeline, and you can see how the trees have been removed. You can see that in the gray, because. And just so the listeners know, this hillshade elevation is called bare earth. So when the plane flies over and they shoot the ground with the laser, it's going to return every tree and every building. But they use an algorithm to take all that away. And so basically, it's as if you had just completely stripped the ground and you're just looking at what the dirt
Yeah.
looked. And what makes it amazing is when the laser hits something, the color of the laser coming back tells the device what it bounced off. So did it bounce off of a tall tree because it's so much higher than everything around it? Did it bounce off rock? Did it bounce off water? Did it bounce off a building material like metal or concrete? All that stuff's available. And you can take this data and do all kinds of stuff with it. And I'm barely scratching the surface. I'm just using it to make maps that are to scale and, putting everything in the right place.
Now, this may not have anything to do with it. What is LiDAR?
So LiDAR is you're scanning the ground with a laser, And it's like, think of what Doppler radar does for raindrops. LiDAR is doing for any object around you. And the time it takes for that laser light to go out and come back is the distance from the camera.
Okay.
So if you know where the camera is, then you know where everything else is. We use phones now have LiDAR. Have you ever seen, you can take a little 3D map of the room you're in?
Oh, okay.
Architects use it to map the inside of old buildings like cathedrals. Chartres Cathedral is slowly falling apart. It's just because of the thinness of the stone that it was made out of. And they have used LiDAR cameras set up inside of it to get an accurate 3D model of exactly how the walls might be bent or whatever, so they can figure out how to reinforce it without it looking like, ugly, like someone wearing braces or something. They want to do it in a very aesthetically pleasing way. But basically, you're taking a device and scanning something with laser light.
Yes.
And you're just collecting points. And what makes this stuff so usable that wasn't usable 20 years ago is they're making it more dense in its coverage. So in a square meter of the surface of the earth, they might hit the ground 8 or 9 times with a point of light. And if that's within a square meter, those points are going to be probably a foot or 2 apart. And that's going to give you a really good depiction of what the ground looks like.
Yes.
Every year they sort of up the requirements so that the LiDAR data always gets better. It always gets more detailed. And then a new standard comes out. And then all the counties try to get, let's get up to this level. Let's get up to this level. And of course you can use it for anything. You can use it for any kind of construction or any kind of, you want to just see where water flows, or you want to see what the vegetation is, or the rock content compared. I mean, part of the flood analysis is if an inch of rain fell in this area, what would get absorbed and what would get runoff?
Yeah.
It's all part of the calculation. But I'm trying to get disc golf to benefit from the details that other people are coming up with.
I'm just trying to make better Frisbee throwing maps. Have you had any conversations with UDisc or maybe DGPT for using your graphics on there? Like, has there ever been any?
No, I've emailed those guys. You don't hear from them.
Man,
we had
the same issue.
We had the same. We tried to get me press passes and media stuff, and they don't even email us back. So
yeah. Part of the problem is, I mean, I could have a real cynical view of it, but part of the problem is that this sport is in its infancy. Mm-hmm. When you compare it to golf, compared to baseball, to basketball. I mean, think about what baseball was going through in the first 40 years that it was a sport, and how much changed, I mean, if you go from when it first started to when we had a 3-point line, I think have we had the 3-point line for more than half of basketball's age? No, probably less than, and the shot clock is probably a little more, but the game got really slow and boring. And so they put a shot clock up and it kept the pace going. So these are the developments, and the grassroots part of it is, I mean, look at Jomez. He went out and just started filming. Mm-hmm. And then people got interested in his content. And then he made himself something. Well, he hired his friends to go with it and do it with it. And then he gets into Disc Golf Pro Tour. It's a bunch of people that have always known each other, right? And so if they don't need the expertise, they're not going to reach out for it.
Of course.
But
at least at this point.
Right. And at the same time, though, I'm going to show with a second opinion, this is what I think's going on.
Yeah.
Because it's only going to make the sport better if we're aware of where that problem can be.
Absolutely. I mean, a more detailed map or a T sign, everyone would appreciate that.
When are we getting shot tracking?
Right. Live shot tracking.
And if you have a bad map and you try to track shots, you're either going to make it more confusing or you're going to show everyone how bad the map is.
Yeah.
So we'll get there eventually. We'll figure out a way to do it. But we have to have details. If you're commentating, if you had to explain hole 13 after a group of guys teed off and you saw their discs just scatter or go in the water, would that map help you explain to people what's going on?
Yeah, it should.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The UDisc question is another one, and there may be a little chip there. So UDisc, the UDisc guy started here in the Twin Cities, and I approached one of them, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and said, hey, you know, if you could put detailed maps under UDisc. And his answer was, could you do it for the whole world? And I thought, well, you don't need to. You only need to do it for the most popular courses. But if that's your answer, then I know you're not interested and I won't bug you anymore.
Sure,
So
yeah, that's kind
so
of
that-
yeah.
that, I mean, that, and the other problem, UDisc has a mobile phone issue, and I am not going to throw them under the bus either. UDisc is a great app. I use it when I go to a course I've never been to before because I don't want to waste my time trying to find the T for hole 2, because it's going to tell me exactly which way to start walking.
Yeah.
But a mobile phone is not a high accuracy GPS device.
No.
And people will notice this if they've ever marked their own course with it and then they go back. So the mobile phone needs to know what road you're on. And roads are 40 feet wide. So if it knows you're within 40 feet of a road, then it knows you're not at the other road. And then it can snap to that road and say, oh yeah, here you are right here. You walk out in the woods, you've got trees blocking your satellite signal to all those satellites that your phone is talking to. And the phone doesn't have the circuitry that actually corrects over and over and over to really pinpoint. You're not going to get a great map out of that.
Sure, you'll see
At this
the
level.
little pointer on there. You're just kind of like going different directions, kind of in circles.
But
I've seen issues with that on UDisc.
right,
Going. Go ahead.
but the mobile phone put the longitude and latitude in with its discrepancy. And then you come up with another phone and take that longitude and latitude and try to tell where you are. Now you have a second discrepancy. So there's a lot of good there, but it's not, UDisc won't tell you how to play a hole.
No.
UDisc won't tell you that it's a 30-foot drop down in that ravine and another 20 foot back up the other side.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, it'll do a lot of things. Don't have a problem with that. But if you need the detail, and so, you know, the commentators could use it. The viewers online can use it because they don't know how steep the terrain is. But here's the other thing. What about pitch count? We don't talk about that in disc golf at all. You know, baseball pitch count, like how many pitches is before you rotate that pitcher back in 3 games from now.
Yeah.
How tired is their arm? We're not going to have a problem when 22-year-olds go out and just throw 90 shots.
Yeah.
But when you get someone like a Ricky or a Paul, who are growing older, at some point you can't memorize every course. And at some point you're going to want to have a diagram that says, oh, all I got to do is get here, and it's this much, it's this far, and it's this far around the corner. And you pull the disc out and you throw it once just to test your line. You're not wearing your shoulder out.
Yeah.
And if you look at golf on a Sunday, when they're trying to win their millions of dollars, it's golfer and caddy, and they are flipping through chart after chart after chart. And I did look this up. That started in the 50s. And it started with people like Arnold Palmer actually drawing their own maps as they went from course to course. They were drawing their own caddy books so they could remember when they went back exactly what they needed to do.
Yeah.
And that turned into an industry. We don't even have caddies for the pro. You know, we're not at the point where you can hire a caddy to be with you as your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will we get there?
Head buddy usually.
Right. Or whoever said yes. You know, that
your mom.
Like Proctor when he was caddying last year for yeah. And I thought that was great. And that's but if you have charts that will save you a few throws, Sprinkle Valley. Do you remember that hole 18 that just tore up the FPO?
Oh yeah, we remember that.
Macaulay, can you pull that up? He did
you can find it if you go.
I think I actually gave it to him earlier.
Did you give it to him?
Because I was really interested in that. While he's pulling that up, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I actually had this written down. you're talking about like caddy books. Now, say somebody hires you 4 signs for a course, right? Has anybody ever, or have you thought about like on their bulletin board have a QR code where they could download a PDF where each sign would be in that download, and you'd have a caddy book on your phone, because your signs are extremely detailed. And let's be honest, talking about smoking pot, 75% of the people are high as fuck when they're playing, and by the time they get to their shot, they done forgot what was on the T sign. You know what I mean? That they could
Yeah,
at least have it
digital
on
caddy
their,
book.
yeah, like a digital caddy book. Has anybody done that with your signs?
I don't know if anyone's done it. I put I put a QR code on every course map that has, so when I'm making a set of signs for a park or a client, you know, whatever, I just finished a set of signs for a course in Dublin, Virginia, and I did a course for Southern Arkansas. I put proofs up on my website so they can look at it and say, this is right, fix this, that sort of thing. I leave them up. And then I put a QR code on the full map that goes back to that. So if you go to a specific site, or if you go to my website and you just click on it says like courses or maps or something, what do I even have there? And it has a drop down of, it says T signs and it has states listed. You can see them all.
Yeah.
So anyone can get to them. The thing I would love to do is to have those geo-referenced so that your GPS is telling you where you are on the fairway.
Yes.
But I already explained how the phone may or may not know where you are.
Yeah.
But if you're at the dog leg, that would be helpful. If you know what I'm saying, it still is useful.
Yeah.
But having something with more detail that you can zoom into. And even if you're halfway down the fairway, you can still use those radial lines to count your distance out to where you're headed.
Yeah. See, that, in my head, that's what I was thinking. Because like you can use the radial lines, you can get an idea where you're at and how far away you are. I mean, I that would be, especially playing a course that you've never played.
Right.
Very beneficial.
You know, with your signs too, it gives you, say it's a, you know, I throw 320, you know what I mean? I'm a 880 player.
Mm-hmm.
I throw 320, 340. So a lot of times if I'm playing a par 4, I'm breaking it down into two shots. And if I know I'm pretty accurate from 200 feet, if I can see a tree out there and use your line, say, oh, that's 200 feet away, I'm just going to that tree right there. It's only 300. I mean, it's very beneficial, the detail of your signs. And I really like them. Like I wish I could play every course I played had your signs.
Right,
I mean,
right.
I think it would help AMs score better. Like, and that's another thing. Like, your signs would definitely help score better. And I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm going to use this for a like a clickbait thumbnail. Can you tell me how using T signs, yours or any other T signs, can help people score better?
Exactly what you said. You break down the fairway into the digestible bits.
Yeah.
Because no one goes up to a 600-foot hole unless they're on the Pro Tour and says, I'm going to park it. No, no one does that. And the thing about it, it's kind of like music. You break it down. If you're going to learn, so like I said, my degrees are in music. If you start at the beginning of a piece and go until you make your first mistake and then start over, you're never going to practice where you made the mistake because you won't get back there often enough. You're going to break down the really hard part. Brody Smith made a really good comment right after.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
Listen, one of the things I like about him is when he starts breaking down ideas into something, he actually has thought them through.
Yeah.
They might come off a little forceful sometimes. Where,
I've said many times I like Brody because he says what he wants to,
right.
and he does. He's smart. He's a smart guy.
He backs it up, and this is what he backed up. And he said this too because he's a golfer. And when he was on the show, what is the show? Where they do all the trick shots.
Oh, shit! I know. What the hell is the trick shot show?
Oh, Dude Perfect.
Yeah, he was explaining. He said, I had played disc golf, with the best people in the sport. And he said, I had played golf with the best people in the sport. And this is how he set it up. It was great. He said, golfers don't go to the tee and drive the tee a bunch of times. They go to the part of the fairway where they hope to not land. But if they land there, they want to practice how to get out of that spot. Yeah. And that was a comparison he made. And he's exactly right. A musician will go to the hardest part of the music and practice it over and over until they got it nailed, because the beginning may not be the hard part, right? But you got to be ready for it. And he said he's practiced with all these disc golfers, and all they do is just play the hole.
Yeah.
Well, if you
try to land it in the perfect spot and practice from there.
Right. And if you don't make the perfect tee shot, you never practiced how to recover.
Yeah.
And one of the things that made Sprinkle Valley 18 so hard is it put people in positions where they didn't know exactly what to do when their shot failed.
Yeah.
And you could see it over and over. And he was talking about, you go to the spot you don't want to be, but you practice it in case you end up there.
Yeah.
Oh, and I made this graphic because people didn't understand when they were up against the berm. That's a small pond. You can see 3 ponds going across there.
Yeah.
And the reason they made it an OB area is because if they had had a week of rain, there'd be a foot of water in there. So they were trying to plan for any weather scenario.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And you can't see that on coverage, and you can't see it on an aerial photo. That you don't realize you're actually going through a small bowl.
Yeah.
But the other problem is and this one I didn't put trees on here. In front of the berm, that's that little wooden bridge thing right in the middle, are all those cedar trees.
Yeah.
And when you threw into the cedar trees, how do you know where you're going to be to make your next shot? That's almost impossible to know. But I put these up to just to show what was going on. And then I put a profile up too to show how most people didn't know that it climbs.
Oh, the elevation change threw me for a loop. I had no idea it went up that far. Ellie, if you can find that.
If you look at the contour lines, take the contour line just below the bridge and follow it around the side. There you go. Look how high it's going up. And that's not the tee. That's 400 feet down the fairway on the far left.
Okay.
And they have those railroad ties that are standing up to be barricades. Yeah, so you get past the railroad ties, you land in the cedar trees. Sorry, those aren't really cedar trees. I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah, that is not an evergreen, sir.
Right.
Inaccurate.
My clip art library is not what it should be.
I got the point, though.
The idea is, there are the trees that you have to work through, and then you've got to get over the berm. And I think if I had been playing this, and everyone's an armchair quarterback, right? If I had been playing this, being right up to the OB against the berm was the mistake. And if you go OB, you can take it as far back as you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Back it up 20 feet so you don't have to throw nose up to get over the berm.
Yes, that was the big thing too, is there was a headwind. People were throwing nose up stall shots, and they were just getting
they were getting hammered.
Yeah.
But if they had gone out, there is nothing critical about that tee shot. If they had gone out and emptied their entire bag of mid-ranges from those trees, they would have, I don't think they practiced what they needed to practice for what was coming. And after 17 other holes and you're tired, your brain is dead.
So what are your feelings on hole 18, with that being said? Hole 18, Sprinkle Valley.
I have to be honest with you. The owners of the brewery got a hold of me to make tee sign maps for them.
Yeah.
So I've had a conversation or two. So I don't want to say that I like the hole just because I had a conversation with the owners about maybe making signs. I like the hole because of that exact thing. It tests your skill set, and it tests your mental acuity to not have the wheels come off.
Yes.
I have played a lot of disc golf tournaments, and I have had the wheels come off in a round that didn't make any sense. And so I could say I've been there, not in any way high pressure situation and not anything on the Pro Tour, but your pride is still on the line,
Oh yeah.
I think if it had been raining, we wouldn't be talking about this hole at all. because wet, muddy, Central Texas soil is sticky and slippery all at the same time, and people would have been having disaster. They would have been more careful. They would have taken better care of what shot they were throwing and how they were going to slice it up. And they might be averaging 2 or 3 strokes over.
Only?
No, I mean averaging. What I'm saying is they would have been so careful saying it's a par 5. If I get there in 7, I'm good. And they would have planned for 7.
Yeah.
But the problem is you plan for 4.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And the shit starts happening and you get up with 11.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's why I watch golf on TV. The mentality of it is how is this train wreck going to finally, why in the world do we have these old black and white photos when they take those locomotives and run them into each other?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of, is it like the 1800s equivalent of a monster truck rally? I mean, do they just want to see stuff blow up? Because that's what we were watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway. You said that, that the wheels came off on hole 18 there was a shit ton of wheels just laying right there where that arrow was pointing down.
Oh yeah. That's right. That and look at that distance too. And listening to coverage, I was hearing all kinds of distances.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, it's got to be 200 feet. That's crazy. And of course, when you're online and people are just typing in anything they think they know, and I'm thinking this is knowable. This is something we can actually measure and put down and decide.
Yeah, I mean this graphic right here. What if DGN could pull this up and show us that? I mean, it's a game changer. Yeah. It really is.
Right.
I remember me and Gibbs actually having that conversation, talking about like how far you think that is, 200 feet, and then one of us was like, I don't remember which one it was like, nah, it's probably a good 230 too. Like 150 feet is how far that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And am I off by 5 feet? Maybe, but that's at least way more ballpark than any speculation of something different. But the other thing is, you might be throwing nose up, but you're not dropping back down in elevation.
Yeah.
If that basket was lower, even fewer people would be making the island.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bad shots are hitting the trees like a lot of them did. And I have to say this, if you watched the first time Kristen played it, when she got, I think she was off of the OB line by about 30 feet, probably in between those last 2 trees, let's say. She completely missed her shot early release into the woods. Yeah. And I think that rattled her enough where those next shots up by I think she should have done is just re-teed from that spot, because she's already practiced that shot.
Mm-hmm.
And she can fix that early release. But by going up to the OB line, she gave herself a new shot.
Yeah.
That it would have been smarter. It would have been smarter to play your old lie, because you just threw the disc off the old lie and you have the elevation right. You just were off with an early release to the left.
Yeah.
Just
right. Player B always throws better.
Yeah.
When you're playing a practice round, the second putt always goes in.
Mm-hmm.
Because the first one was your practice shot. So just do that one again.
Absolutely.
I think sponsors should have allowed all players to use a Berg for that upshot, and then we would have had a lot less 11s. That's a Berg shot every day.
Wait a minute. I'm checking your YouTube channel. Are you sponsored by them?
No, I'm not. I have no affiliation with Captain Blast.
Little product placement for the Berg.
I do like the Berg. I had a question though. Whenever you design T signs, like how do you balance giving players enough information without like cluttering up the sign?
Yeah, that's a good
How do you find that balance? Is it just
I don't know. I try to take I wish I had some formula. I probably should stop making signs and just start making money teaching people how to make these things. But the problem is I wouldn't know what to teach, because if I go back and show you a sign I made 10 years ago, it doesn't look like this, that sort of thing. But I will say this, the pet peeve I have is when people will say something like, wow, that's too busy. Well, what does that mean? If I get on an airplane with 200 other people and you go in, the cockpit doors open, you look in there, I don't want to see one yoke and one dial. I want to see a whole array of dials. It's going to tell.
It shouldn't be this simple.
Right. And the way the sign is laid out, the most important information is the easiest to get. I was going to make a joke earlier when you said, yeah, they're high as fuck when they look at them. I said, I'm going to find the right colors. So the higher you are, the less information gets in your way. You know, it's like being colorblind or THC blind, maybe.
Yes. Yes.
And you only see what you need to see, and then you can take another hit and go on with your.
Yeah. People look at a sign that has all this data on it, and they're like, I don't know what that means, dude.
But I get reactions from people that I can tell haven't looked at a lot of maps like this. Oh, it's too busy. And then you get someone who's been hiking their whole life and been reading topo maps. They say, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I can't believe all this is here.
Yeah.
It's a balance. I mean, how do you, for example, on the 13 that I made for you, I didn't put any individual trees because you can't really say where are the tree trunks.
Right.
So I just put a pattern in there that's just woods. But it's filtered enough. I mean, it's opaque. I mean, not opaque. It has enough transparency so you can see the contour lines.
Mm-hmm.
But when you put the contour lines down, you have to fade them a little bit so it doesn't look like a freaking zebra. You know, so you can get a sense of the whole thing. So it's just a balance, and I think I've made enough of them and looked at enough of them to say this is closer to what needs to be here. There are things you don't need to do. Ryan, it's so funny because I just listened to that because I wanted to get a gist of the conversation. And he said about making a graphic, and the whoever it is, once it comes back, says, can you put a basket in there? and he laughs. He says, it's disc golf.
Yeah, they already
Everyone knows. Well, my pet peeve on T signs is when they put the word hole.
Right.
If you haven't made the numbers the right size that you have to tell someone which is the hole number.
Yeah.
Now, maybe that's true for hole 3 because it might be par 3, but hole 18 doesn't need to say hole.
Hole 18. Yeah, sure. 18 will work.
That's the kind of thing. And then there's a hierarchy. So what I do on my maps, first of all, if you don't know this already from a graphic point of view, the English language, along with many other languages, reads left to right, and the lines go down the page. So our eyes, when we look at a sign, start in the upper left corner automatically. We don't even think about it. That's where the whole number should be.
Yeah.
Because that's where your eye goes first.
Yeah, that's makes sense. Yeah.
And from there, I try to make the fonts big enough where if you're waiting for someone to throw and you're at the back of the tee or behind, you can at least see the distance so that you see it before you get up there. And it's all in this little badge in the upper corner. So the map is the full sign. I can't stand the little T signs where you go up and the map is like, how do I do this? The map is like this little bitty square. There's this giant sign, and usually there's a picture in the background to make it more confusing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a map. And on the part of the map you don't need to know anything about, you stick the number in the distance up there and the elevation change.
That was, I think you may have already answered it, but I was going to ask what your biggest pet peeve was in looking at signs.
I
signs or maps.
If you're going to put a map on a T sign, are you making the map small because you're not sure the map is any good? Or are you making it small because the map doesn't have any detail?
Right.
And should it be a schematic? Should you just have, if you can't make a great map, should you just have an arrow that goes up and over just to show the curve of the fairway?
Yeah.
Could you figure out with a laser, if there's a dog leg, a number for that dog leg? Like, I'm going to turn the corner at 220 feet because I know what mid-range I'm going to pull out and turn the corner at 220 feet.
It'd be incredibly helpful to have that.
And it's possible. It's just, but one of the things I'm doing by using GIS data is I'm solving a lot of that measuring. I'm not out in a course. Well, I'm solving it for me. I'm not out with a laser spending an hour at a hole trying to get every little thing. I'm just finding the tee, and I'm finding the basket, and the GPS records where I walk. You know, it leaves that little breadcrumb trail. The other thing I love to do is I love to write on the full maps. I didn't put any on this page, but on the full maps, the trail of how you actually walk from basket to the next tee. And you can measure the length of that trail. And if you take the measurement of walking all the fairways plus all the trails, you can get a total walking length. And then you can take the total length of the fairways and you can see how efficient the layout is. Like, wow, we spent half our time walking to the next.
Yeah, they kept bringing that up at Music City Open, how far away the holes were.
So I made a map to show what it was.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I could easily calculate, and I think I don't even know what I did with it. I might have thrown it up on Twitter. I can't remember, but they said, what was it, 9,000 feet of fairways and almost 9,000 feet of walking. Grant Zellner, I think, said that. So I think I sent it to him on Twitter, and it was actually about 5,000. So they weren't off, but it wasn't the same length as the course, but it was still a significant amount. But I just wanted to show that, yeah, you can figure that out. You can measure those things.
Yeah.
So
have you ever gotten any feedback from a player, like a pro, that said that your design change, or not necessarily a pro, just any player that's like, hey, this changed the way I played the hole, your course?
I haven't had a pro interact with a sign I made yet.
Okay. But you do have some signs out like in your area?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, well, the interesting thing is you're never a hero in your hometown as far as, and the other thing I'm doing about this is so niche is if you look online at the number of people that will ask, what software do I need to make a tee sign? And compare that to the number of people that will ask, which MIG welder do I need to make a basket?
Yeah.
No one is out there thinking they can make a basket.
Right.
But there's a lot of people out there thinking all I got to do is just put some squiggly lines on and Paint Shop Pro and I can make a tee sign. And I'm fine with that, because if we get more tee signs out there, I mean, that's one thing our sport has a problem with is so many courses just don't have a sign.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to discourage anyone, but I'm saying that I make these things at a professional level. It's a side hustle. This is not the full-time gig for me. I mean, it might be eventually, but there are plenty of people that will make their own signs for budget reasons, because baskets are pricey and concrete is expensive. And so the signs don't come in the budget. I get a lot of people who say, yeah, we haven't had good signs for a while, and here now we're ready to raise some money to do this, that sort of thing. So I haven't had that intersection yet, but the only thing I did do, so the preserve is 90 miles, about 90 minutes from here. So I've gone out to the preserve when the Pro Tour comes by, and I took some examples of my signs, and I was there helping with the local club. We have the Minnesota Frisbee Association, and I was helping with the local club. So during a break, I went over to the Prodigy tent and talked to Gannon Burr. Smart kid. If you listen to the way he talks about the game, he has everything calculated. And I had sample maps of the preserve that I had made, and one was hole 18. Of course, they just walked off of hole 18. And I said, hey, Gannon, what do you think of this? And he goes, those are awesome. Those would be great. He goes, Gannon approved. I should have had my phone recorded for him.
Like, you speak in third person?
Yeah. So I've gotten some feedback.
Yeah.
But if I put it up on Instagram or Twitter, I'm not going to hear from a pro player, because the algorithm, I'm not someone that's going to have the interaction. I don't even know if they see it or whatnot. But that's my next step, is to start getting these things in front of pro players.
Absolutely. Because I guarantee that you'd have some very positive feedback for it.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Can I want to ask you this, and you can tell me to go shut the hell up and leave you alone or whatever. But like a price comparison to your map or your T signs compared to just like a good T sign, like, are they much more? Are they close to the same price, or?
I had so the guy I was working with in Texas, I grew up. I didn't know him when I was there, but he's a big mover and shaker in the area, Chris Vandegrift, and he's been having me do T signs for him. Chris was the TD for Texas State's the year and the year before when it was on the Pro Tour. So he's connected to a lot of people, and he had told me, I got a guy I checked out his signs and I checked out his price, and he said he was slightly more expensive with way less detail. And I said, okay, I'm fine with that. I tried to, like Ryan said, with his stamp designs, I try to price it on the time it's going to take me to get it done. But when you're starting and you're starting to put all the details in, it actually takes you longer because you want to get it right.
Yeah.
I offer two things. I will send you graphics if you have a sign shop you want to use, because there's no reason to not use your local sign company. Sometimes cities or counties already have a sign shop, and they'll manufacture the panel and bolt it on the pole, and you just need to send the graphics. So I do both. I think the graphics are comparable. So I have a chart, like if I make a sign and I add the little range marks to it, there's like a little upcharge. And then I add the profile, there's a little upcharge because that's all extra. But the basic sign for one tee and one basket is $65 for the graphic. That might sound expensive, but if you put a sponsor on that sign, you can probably get that plus the printing covered. If you put a $200, the panel, I use a company, shipping is one thing. That's why I also encourage people to use local so they don't have to pay to ship it out there. In fact, what do I have waiting to go right here?
Nice.
So the typical sign I make, that's the size I made, that 13. This is a speed limit blank.
Okay.
So it's a sign you would use to put a speed limit on. 18 by 12. That panel.
That's great. I mean, that looks great.
Yeah. And the other thing I love too is there's a matte finish, so it's not too glossy. Yeah. There's not so much glare in the sun.
Does it have your website on there? Did you plug?
I just put my name. Yeah. Nice. I put it on. I put it below the
custom course maps. Okay.
Is that backward in the?
No.
It always reverses.
Yeah.
That panel's $40. So for $120 to $130 for all the detail per hole.
I don't think that's bad at all.
Less than a basket.
Yeah.
Way less than a tee pad.
You're talking about the detail that goes into those signs too. I think it's worth it.
The other thing that I've done, because I'm just one of those nerds that just never stops learning, is Adobe Illustrator can be scripted with JavaScript, like the coding that runs the web. I can actually make a lot of this stuff automated. I just get the data in the right spot and then get JavaScript to do some of the nitty gritty clicking. So I'm getting more efficient, which means getting more stuff out the door faster, which is very helpful because like I said, it's part-time. So, you're burning the midnight oil trying to get that thing done.
Yeah. Of course. Now we've mentioned Ryan a couple times. Whenever in his interview, he said he kind of hides an Easter egg in some of his artwork. Have you ever done that to a sign?
I haven't. I only do goofball stuff. Like it's on the 13. Did you see the dragon? The water dragon?
The submarine.
And the submarine's on a search and rescue mission for all the people that overthrew the basket. I put stuff like that in there because it's fun, but then I'll know it's mine. If someone took a picture of it and put it online, but they only took a small part of it and posted it online and that was in there, I would know.
Yeah.
I just, just goofy stuff like that. So I did a set of signs for this guy. He had more money than he knew what to do with. And he saw the dragon and he said, hey, can you put a mermaid in this one? He started naming all the stuff he wanted in all the bodies of water throughout the park,
Yeah.
So then I came up with the submarine, a little one-man submarine, some guy down there trying to.
You should try messing with one just because they're potheads. Be like, actually, if you listen to Pink Floyd's "Dark Side of the Moon" while looking at this,
you got to start it exactly.
I'll put a QR code on there that says soundtrack.
yes.
Now, when it comes, like you said, something about people getting sponsors for each T sign or whatever, do you put the sponsors on the T signs or?
So that's a funny thing too. I just did a course. It's in fact, if you want to go back to the website, it's a great example, but not of the sponsor. And I just want to put a plug out for this course too. This is in a little town in West Wisconsin. So go down to the other 13. It's down there. There it is. Look at the distance on the gold layout.
Holy crap.
So this is in a little town called New Richmond, Wisconsin. So it's near the Twin Cities, basically right before you cross into Minnesota if you're coming west. And it's about maybe 15 miles off Interstate 94. The city raised a ton of money. They took over this 40 acres they had, and then they actually leased property from the adjacent farms that were too steep to cultivate, so they couldn't plow any of it. And so they said, well, we're going to lease this from you and to get this incredible layout. And they put sponsors on this, and I said, they kept telling me, well, the sponsor wants this, but they're so-and-so just merged and now they need a new logo. And I said, okay, look, we're not going to put these on the sign. And I wish I had a photo of this. This sign is posted on just a regular pole. Right below it is a 1 foot by 1 foot sign that has the sponsor on it with their company logo or email or website. There's a couple of restaurants on there that we put at hole 17 and 18 with a QR code so you can order food right before you finish and drive into town and get it ready to, that sort of thing. So that was a smart idea. But having it separate, we can swap it out if we need to. Right. If they have to update a phone number, if they have to, and like I said, that little panel is less than $40. So it's no big deal just to reprint and rebolt. Then we don't have to change a T sign that's perfectly good.
Yeah.
So I have had several people ask about sponsors, and I say, find a way to make it a separate sign or set your sponsors up for a 2-year or 3-year run. Like it's this much money to be on there for 3 years. And then you can keep rotating the sponsors and create revenue for maintenance.
That's smart. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real smart. The reason I asked is I was going to ask you what was like the wildest sponsor that you'd seen, like strip club or something like that. The pink pony zebra or something like that.
The sponsors on these were just pretty much your run of the mill, the same people that would be sponsoring the Chamber of Commerce kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, nothing too crazy.
Well, that's who sponsors it around here. The Chamber of Commerce is sponsored by the pink pony zebra.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing about this course is the city knew nothing about disc golf, and it was a businessman in town who became the mayor, but his grandson played. And his grandson was really enthusiastic. And so the grandfather mayor said, well, we're going to put a course in. He goes around, starts raising money. No one in the town thought anyone would show up. They thought, why are you doing this? And this is out of town, about a mile or two out of town, at a compost site that they had, it's city land and they could do anything they want with it. And the place it's not on the Wisconsin tour yet. I'm predicting it will be. It's about 8,500 feet in the longs.
Wow.
But the fun part is it's 2 permanent tees and 2 permanent baskets. So you have 4 tracks that you can play. So you can go out there with your son, your 13-year-old, and have the 13-year-old play short to short and you play long to long.
Yeah.
And you're still going to walk the same course and have a great time while you do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can zoom, if you click, is that the clicked version? If you look at the top of the sign, just hit the magnifying glass, it'll get a little bit bigger. But at the top of the sign, I reversed the distances. So it shows you as you're getting closer to the pin, what's left. Because no one's throwing 1,100 feet off the tee. So if you have this sign on your phone, you can tell when you've turned the corner. But then if you scroll to the bottom and look at the elevation profile, this is a monster.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's further uphill than where the tee is.
It goes uphill after you turn the corner.
Oh, wow.
So you got to hit the corner and climb.
Oh, man.
Yeah, this is a monster. In fact, I think in the back 9, there are probably the 4 toughest holes in Wisconsin are on the back 9 of this course. And the fun part is, in the very bottom of the sign, look below you just glance below the big hill on the elevation contour. You see that brown patch?
Mm-hmm.
That's the parking lot. And if you look above the middle of the profile, it says 18A. That's the short for 18. You
Okay.
could pop out of the parking lot, go to 13, play the last 5 holes, and you've played some of the toughest disc golf, and you could do it in less than an hour.
Yeah.
You know, and I even thought about sponsoring a bounty to see who could come up. Just have a day where everyone just pick a day. Everyone comes out. You get $10 to play, and I have a $100 bounty for the lowest score.
Mm-hmm.
And you just put $10 in every time you play, and I'll pay the lowest score. You know, just because to show it is. And this hole is long. It's not the hardest one. Hole 15. And if anyone's interested, find Whispering Hills. All the T signs are on my site. Go to the long T signs. Hole 15, 250 feet off the tee, drops about 20 feet through a wooded tunnel. So you can't go over it. It's too far. Maybe AB could if he's ever out there.
Right.
If once you get up, you have about 300 feet left of rolling terrain. It's impossible. If you don't hit the wooded tunnel, you're already sitting 4
Yeah.
on your way out. And it's a par 5. It's 700 feet, I think. Anyway, the next one, you throw 300 feet, you climb almost 45 degrees through woods to pop out on top to hit. And so you just never have a chance to really chew up the fairway on a shot.
Yeah.
Which makes it so difficult. Tim Mackey
Makes me
designed the course. He's an old ultimate player that lives up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. It's if you are ever in the area, just look up New Richmond and go find this course. And just walk it. Just go to the parking lot and look at what's in front of you. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing stuff.
I think maybe depending on the hole, the elevation profile could be the most useful. Like that's so cool.
Well, in figuring out how to talk about it, and what I do when I make the profiles, I used to just go right to the basket and stop. Oh, I have another pet peeve.
Yes,
but it's not about T sign maps per se. It's about drone flyovers. Why in the world do you have a drone go 15 feet off the ground? I can do that with a selfie stick.
Right.
Give me something else. Get above the hole where I can see the tee in the basket and then zoom into the tee and run the whole thing. But what I can't stand is they come up to the basket like, oh, you're done.
Yeah.
How many times have you played a hole and you leave the basket and you turn around and look back up the fairway so you can see that dimension?
Yes.
Take that drone, fly around the basket, and show back up towards the tee.
Yes.
So we can see the approach. Mm-hmm. So if anyone's seeing this podcast and has any control over drone footage, finish the flight. That would be so helpful.
Absolutely.
But I think you're right. I think the profile is really worth seeing what's out there.
Yeah, and just to show you how the hole actually plays, especially if it's like a long par 4, par 5, you're like, oh, I didn't realize it finished uphill that far. It blew my mind seeing Sprinkle Valley hole 18 that it was that far uphill. And not crazy uphill.
Not crazy, but you're grinding up. Yeah. Whatever the wind's doing, the ground's doing to you too. You're grinding up. The other thing too is I try to make the profile past the basket go drop off. Mm-hmm. And the hole 13 I made for Rome,
accentuate.
Right.
Yeah.
The profile I made for Rome doesn't go up because the fairway curves so that you're going along the contour. Mm-hmm. If I had done a profile that went directly straight at the basket over OB, you'd see it drop off behind the basket. So it's a little deceiving in that regard. Portland, I think it's the same course we were talking about. Somewhere on the turnaround, I was watching this on coverage, and they will show a couple of cards of maybe people that haven't been on tour as much, and you're thinking maybe there's a little less experience throwing really short shots. And the next day, watching the same people throw the fairway correctly. And it's because the fairway goes up and it looks like it goes down because the optical illusion of the hills and the mountains behind you. And I thought that's the litmus test right there for having a profile, because it slowly rises up and they're throwing a level shot that just gets worm burned until they realize, wait, I got to throw higher.
Yeah.
And the profile would fix that for you, but it's an optical illusion when you're standing on the tee.
Yeah, and like I think especially if like the DGPT implemented your elevation profile, like that would help so much because I remember going to Mill Ridge and not thinking some of those holes look not completely different than how they're portrayed on camera,
Mm-hmm.
but very different in my head. I'm like, oh, like some of these holes are way further, or like you said, the elevation's the big one. I mean,
Well, look at 17 in that
that
Music
would be
City
good for the
building.
viewer to be able to take,
Look at the climb on Music City. The guys that were throwing just to get around that Mando with a big Anheuser, trying to pop out on the hill. It's a steady climb up to the basket.
Yeah.
And then when Kristen, it was such a beautiful shot when she just parked.
That was crazy.
That hole 18.
18.
But that's like a 15 or 20 foot drop.
Oh yeah.
If you put the disc up correctly, it's going to float extra.
Yeah.
But you have to flirt with that OB and then hope it comes back.
It was such a clutch shot.
She just nailed it, but it wouldn't be possible without the elevation drop.
Yeah.
And you don't when it's a really slow drop, you just like Sprinkle Valley, you don't realize how much it actually affects or how much it builds up.
Oh, I would love to see for what's the damn toboggan. I'd love to see the elevation profile for some of those at toboggan because, like I said, and they say it all the time when you're watching coverage, like the camera does not do these hills justice. You're not seeing how high uphill these are, how far downhill. The elevation change the elevation profile could definitely help for the viewer to actually be able to.
Yeah. I've made a few of those, and I call it my guerrilla marketing. Guerrilla, like secret warfare guerrilla, because I'm always throwing this stuff out there. But I usually post. So my method is the tour starts, and usually you get a practice round on Jomez on Tuesday, and you can see the layout. Because if you go to UDisc, they might have changed it for the tournament, or UDisc is just off. So you go watch a practice round, so you know exactly where everything is. Then I'll pick a hole that I really think is interesting. And then watching coverage, I'm getting the clues I need to do that map. And then by Sunday, I'll have a map ready to post. But what did I do for, it was the one at Bad Rock, KC Wide Open.
Mm-hmm.
They used a very similar layout to the year before, and they had just updated the aerial photo for that area. So I knew exactly where every tee, that's why I did that. Hey, this isn't 939.
Yeah.
I had brand new aerial photos that showed all of the new locations. So I wasn't guessing. So I did a set of profiles and published them just so people could see on certain holes how much down there is and up. I don't remember which ones I did, but like 16 after you play the little pond hole, then for MPO, you have that tunnel shot across FPO's tee pad, and then it just slowly climbs. And then you can't use a rangefinder if you can't see over a hill.
Right.
Hole 8's the same way. MPO has to throw towards FPO's pin, then they dogleg up a hill, and you can't see the basket. It's over a hill. It's a blind shot. If you get out the woods, your second shot's blind to the basket.
Yes.
That's exactly when elevation profile and a T sign that tells you how far out you are is going to be golden.
Very helpful.
A rangefinder won't work there.
Like I said, if not for the players, for the viewers too, I think it'd be very insightful for the viewers to see
Right. I think one, the viewer is the big beneficiary. Two, the commentator has something to grab a hold of to verify, and then the player. And the player would be the hardest because they're there on that Monday or Tuesday when the course is fresh. I'd have to have information from the Pro Tour about, hey, what do you have going on out there to do it? But why not just do it for one hole on the front nine and one hole on the back? See what the reaction is.
Yeah.
See what the response is to it. And then, okay, we'll expand it. Let's do it. And then, given enough lead time, but sometimes the local group is still putting the course together. They're still figuring out some little thing they need to do. And that makes it really challenging. And the other thing about disc golf is it's so easy to make adjustments. That adjustments get made, and then they're really hard to track down.
And then it's null and void. Then your course map is kind of
right.
Yeah.
My point is, why put out something if it's not going to be right? So sometimes I don't publish. I've looked up all the stuff for a tour stop, and then I've not done anything because I couldn't verify what I had. And I thought, I'm not going to put out something wrong. I just won't put out anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
DGPT, get in cahoots with Custom Course Map now.
Well, you know what? I did the Sprinkle Valley stuff, and Charlie used a bunch of graphics, and he made a joke. I was going to say this earlier. He made a joke on the Upshot, and he said, and he and it's Josh, isn't it? His he said, "Oh yeah, these graphics are great. These are and Josh said, hey, I don't know why Discog Pro Tour doesn't use them." And Charlie said, "I think he charges $1,000 a hole."
I remember him saying that. I was about to say, I think he mentioned you at some point.
He did, and and so what happened is that comes out on a Monday afternoon, and so Monday on Twitter, I see that Jess Springs starts following me, and I thought, well, how'd that happen? And then I realized it's because the Upshot, he blasted that out. Yeah. So I wrote a comment on the YouTube video of the Upshot, and I said, thanks, Charlie. If anyone asks, these cost $1,000 now.
Yes, yeah, you go. I'll do it for you. I'll do it for $900 for you, Mr. Spring.
$9.99.
Yeah. It's a deal. But look, man, we've gone on a long time. We'll go ahead and let you go. This has been very informative.
Yeah, this has
been
a blast.
maybe the most insightful, informative podcast we've had. This is awesome.
No, I appreciate it. And everyone that's listening on a video-free podcast service, just go to customcoursemaps.com/violation. Something easy to type in, and you can see the graphics we've been talking about. Yeah. Maybe I'll throw those Sprinkle Valley ones up there too, so they scroll through.
Yes. Definitely.
And listen, and this is for anyone out there. If you are curious about a certain hole or a certain course or a certain thing, reach out to me on Twitter. Twitter for sure I'm on, because on Twitter you can respond with a graphic. Mm-hmm. Instagram you can't comment with a graphic, so it's hard to have a conversation.
At Course Maps, I believe, on
at Course Maps on Twitter, at Custom Maps on Instagram. Okay. I'm also on Blue Sky at Course Maps. There's a growing disc golf community there, and I'm on Reddit as well. Custom Maps with a underscore in the middle. Although Reddit's kind of funny, the moderators always, if I put up something about the Pro Tour, the moderators say it's self-promotion. Yeah. I was like, why is it self-promotion? Because my logo's on there?
Yeah.
I said,
they're weird about self-promotion.
Reddit's wild, man.
But it gets a lot of traffic. So it's
of course,
awesome stuff out every now and then. So yeah, just if you're curious about something you see, and that also helps me. I mean, it's in music, it's called an etude. When you practice something to get better at that skill, if I go find like the hole 13 for Rowan County Park, it was like, yeah, let's go. Let's find out what's in Tennessee. Yeah. I think it's the second thing I've mapped in Tennessee. So you got to go find the data, and you got to go find some YouTube videos. So thanks to those guys. And then you just got to spend some time mashing it together and see what you can come up with. And luckily I found some really good, you can actually see the long T-pad and you can see 14's T-pad from the aerial imagery I found.
Yes.
So that was really helpful too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can't find that. And it's not Google Earth. You got to go other places to get really clear stuff. So yeah.
Well, we got one last question.
Gotcha.
100 men against one full-grown gorilla. Could they take it down?
I just saw this on Twitter, didn't I?
Probably.
Nobody has any tools, weapons?
No, all hands.
I don't know. I depends on the men.
Me.
Yeah. Us two. 50 of him, 50 of me.
We both stand at 5'8".
I'm fat. He's got cancer.
After a round of disc golf or before a round of disc golf?
Before, yeah.
If it's you two, you got him.
Yeah. See?
Yeah. Full B hyenas over the
grill. Well, thanks, man.
Hyenas, yeah.
Thank you. We really do appreciate it. It's been great, man.
All right.
Yeah, like I said, let me know if you want me to come back on, or even if you just want to say, hey, we saw this thing on the tour, or we saw this thing, we were wondering about whatever, and I'll give you an answer if I can find it.
We definitely will.
I would love to have you back on, man.
And if I get down to Tennessee, I'll contact you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll play around.
We'll play around. We'll play your whole 13. I'll take you. Let you get a little dose of that.
Yeah.
I'll play it 100 times against your one time.
All right, man. See you later.
All right. Thanks, guys.